Beloved, there is something about your soulmate's life that may explain why their behavior toward you has felt so difficult to understand, because yes, in this story, your soulmate is already married, but the marriage itself is only the beginning of what they have been afraid to tell you. There is another layer beneath the surface, a truth they have kept hidden because they know the moment you hear it, you may look back at every conversation, every disappearance, every mixed signal, and every unexplained change between you differently. Before anything else, remember this clearly. A complicated marriage does not make secrecy acceptable. An unhappy relationship does not remove your right to know the truth. You should never be pressured to become someone's hidden option, wait indefinitely while they remain committed elsewhere, or accept promises about a future that are unsupported by real action. But the full story may explain why your soulmate behaved in ways that once seemed impossible to reconcile. Your soulmate did not expect you. That is where the complication began. Their life had already been built around responsibilities, routines, expectations, and decisions made long before your connection entered the picture. From the outside, their marriage may have appeared ordinary. Perhaps even successful. There may have been photographs, family events, shared responsibilities, people around them who believed everything was stable. Your soulmate learned how to maintain that image. They knew what to say, how to smile, how to show up. But behind that image, something had been quietly changing for a long time. They felt lonely. Not necessarily because the person they married was terrible. This is important. Sometimes two decent people can slowly become emotionally disconnected. The relationship may not collapse through one dramatic betrayal. Sometimes it disappears through 1,000 small absences. Conversations stop going deep. Affection becomes routine. Both people become consumed by responsibilities. One stops asking questions. The other stops answering honestly. Eventually, they become excellent at running a household while barely knowing what is happening inside each other. Your soulmate may have lived this way for years. They told themselves it was normal. Marriage is not supposed to feel exciting forever. People become busy. Responsibilities take over. They should be grateful. So they ignored the emptiness. Perhaps they even blamed themselves. Maybe they thought, why isn't this enough for me? They had stability. History. Someone beside them. Why did they still feel invisible? Your soulmate became ashamed of the question. So they stopped asking it. Then they met you. And suddenly, what had been missing became impossible to ignore. You asked things differently. You noticed. Maybe your first conversations were completely innocent. Nothing about them seemed dangerous. You talked about ordinary life. Work. Plans. Memories. Funny things. But your soulmate noticed something after talking to you. They felt awake. They went home thinking about the conversation. They remembered details. They wondered what you were doing. Then they started waiting for the next opportunity to speak. At first, your soulmate told themselves this was simply friendship. They enjoyed your company. That was all. But then you noticed something nobody had noticed in a long time. Maybe they said they were fine and you replied, "No, you're not." Your soulmate froze. Perhaps you were right. You saw exhaustion behind their smile. You noticed frustration they thought they were hiding. You asked, "What's really going on?" And for some reason, your soulmate answered. Maybe only a little. But they answered. That frightened them. They had spent years functioning without telling anyone what they truly felt. Now someone they had known for far less time was reaching emotional places that had been untouched for years. Your soulmate began realizing that your connection had crossed into something deeper. That is when guilt entered. Because they knew something you did not know fully. They were married. Perhaps they mentioned it casually early on. Maybe they implied the marriage was effectively over. Perhaps they avoided the subject enough that you never understood the reality. Maybe they told themselves, "I'll explain when I know what this connection actually is." But the connection grew faster than their courage. That was the mistake. They waited. And every day they waited made the truth harder to tell. Your soulmate knew what might happen if they became fully honest. You might step away immediately. You might say, "I cannot be part of this." And you would have every right. That possibility terrified them. Because by then, you mattered. They did not want to lose the one person who had made them feel emotionally understood again. So they did something people sometimes do when truth threatens something they desperately want to keep. They delayed it. Not forever, they told themselves. Just until the timing was right. But there is rarely a perfect time to reveal something that should have been revealed earlier. The longer they waited, the greater the betrayal might feel. And your soulmate knew it. You may have noticed their guilt without knowing its source. They would become warm. Then distant. One day, they spoke as though you were important. The next, they became difficult to reach. Perhaps you thought, "What changed?" The truth is, sometimes nothing changed in their feelings. Their fear simply became louder. After a close moment with you, your soulmate might go home and suddenly face the reality of their marriage. The contrast became unbearable. With you, they felt alive. At home, they felt complicated. And then guilt said, "What are you doing?" So they pulled away. They thought distance was the responsible solution. They believed if they reduced contact, the feelings would fade. But when they stopped speaking with you, something unexpected happened. They missed you. Not only romantically. They missed being understood. They missed telling you things. They missed your questions. They missed how naturally you seemed to notice when their energy changed. Your soulmate discovered that distance did not solve anything. It simply removed the one place where they had felt emotionally awake. That realization created another problem. Now they were comparing. They compared conversations. They compared emotional closeness. They compared how they felt around you with how they felt inside their marriage. This comparison scared them because your soulmate did not want to make a life-changing decision purely because someone new made them feel understood. They knew that would be reckless. So they tried something responsible. They tried looking at the marriage independently of you. They asked themselves, if this person disappeared completely, would I still be unhappy here? At first, they resisted the answer. Then slowly, it became clear. Yes. The problems existed before you. Your connection had not created the emptiness. It exposed it. That distinction matters. But it still did not make your soulmate available. They were still married. And marriage is not only an emotion. It can involve children, homes, finances, families, responsibilities, promises, legal realities. Your soulmate had to face those things. Perhaps for the first time, they attempted to have honest conversations with their spouse. They said something like, "I don't think we are okay." Their spouse may have been surprised. Maybe they replied, "What are you talking about? We're fine." This hurt your soulmate because it revealed how deeply disconnected they had become. One person had been carrying an emotional crisis the other barely recognized. Perhaps they tried counseling. Maybe they agreed to spend more time together. Maybe your soulmate made a sincere effort to determine whether the marriage could be repaired. You may not know any of this. From your side, all you saw was your soulmate suddenly becoming distant. You may have interpreted their withdrawal as loss of interest. Your soulmate may have interpreted it as an attempt to do the right thing. But here was the problem. They never explained it. They were making morally complicated decisions privately while you experienced the emotional consequences publicly. You had no context. So you began questioning yourself. Maybe you thought you were too much. Maybe you had become too emotional. Perhaps you wondered whether your soulmate had simply used you for attention. You replayed everything. Your soulmate never intended for you to feel used. But intentions were no longer enough. Their silence produced an impact. And that impact hurt. Meanwhile, attempts to repair the marriage may not have worked. Perhaps your soulmate and their spouse both began realizing something difficult. The relationship had become something neither person truly wanted to continue in the same way. But admitting that was frightening. There was history. Maybe decades. How do you tell family? What happens financially? What happens to the home? What happens to children? Who becomes the villain? Your soulmate may have remained partly because leaving seemed too complicated. This is where another hidden truth appears. Your soulmate may have been planning or considering separation before your connection became deeply emotional. Perhaps the idea had surfaced more than once. Maybe there had already been discussions. Then they met you. And suddenly your presence made them afraid to proceed. Why? Because if they left now, everyone might believe they left because of you. Their spouse might say, you destroyed this marriage for another person. Their family might blame you. Your soulmate feared you would become the villain inside a story whose problems had begun long before you appeared. They did not want that. And perhaps they also did not trust themselves. They wondered, am I leaving because the marriage is genuinely over, or because I'm emotionally attached to someone new? That is a serious question. Your soulmate knew they needed an honest answer. So they created more distance from you. They believed, if I step away from them and I still want to leave this marriage, then I will know the decision is real. Again, perhaps the intention contained responsibility. But because you did not know the context, the distance felt cruel. You may have cried. You may have wondered why someone could show such intense emotion and then simply disappear. The truth may be that your soulmate was trying to remove you from the equation while determining what their own life required. But you were not a switch they could simply turn off. Even while apart, you remained emotionally present. They thought about you. They missed you. They wondered whether you had moved on. And in the silence, another realization arrived. Even without active contact with you, the marriage still felt wrong. The loneliness remained. The disconnection remained. The unanswered questions remained. That was when your soulmate began accepting that the crisis in their marriage was not created by you. Something was broken independently. Perhaps their spouse came to the same conclusion. Maybe there was a conversation late at night. No screaming. No dramatic betrayal. Just two tired people finally being honest. One may have said, "We haven't been happy for a long time." And the other did not argue. That silence said everything. Perhaps both had been waiting for someone to admit it first. Your soulmate may have cried. Not necessarily because they wanted to save the marriage. Because endings carry grief even when they are necessary. There were good memories too. Maybe they once loved this person deeply. Perhaps they built a life together. Shared important years. You should not expect your soulmate to hate their spouse in order to prove their feelings for you. A mature ending can contain sadness, gratitude, anger, and relief at the same time. Your soulmate started facing this. But there was still a problem. You. They wanted to tell you everything. Yet now the truth sounded even more complicated. How could they explain, "I was married when we met"? The marriage was already struggling. I developed feelings for you. I hid more than I should have. I pulled away partly because I needed to determine whether my marriage would end even without you. Your soulmate knew the story might sound like an excuse. Maybe it is partly explanation. But they understand explanation does not erase accountability. They should have given you enough truth to make your own decision. That is the part they regret most. They made assumptions on your behalf. They told themselves, "If I tell them, they'll be hurt. Perhaps. If I tell them, they'll leave. Maybe." But that choice belonged to you. Your soulmate denied you the ability to choose with full information. They know that now. And this realization has changed the way they think about any future with you. Before, your soulmate wanted to protect the connection from difficult truth. Now they understand that if the connection cannot survive truth, it cannot become healthy anyway. So they are preparing to tell you everything. The marriage. The problems. The attempts to repair it. The guilt. The distance. The reasons they kept pulling away. And perhaps something else. They never stopped loving you during that distance. This may be what surprises you most. From your perspective, their absence may have looked like a decision. You thought they chose their marriage. Maybe technically, for a period, they did choose to honor the marriage by stepping away from you while trying to resolve it. But emotionally, it may not have been the choice their heart wanted. They were trying to determine what was right. Not only what felt good. This matters because someone who is married does have responsibilities. If they developed feelings for you, the healthy path was not to begin a secret second relationship. It was to confront the existing relationship honestly. Perhaps your soulmate finally understands this clearly. If their marriage is continuing, then they should not ask you to remain emotionally entangled. If their marriage is genuinely ending, they must finish that process responsibly before offering promises to you. You deserve a clear situation, not a hidden one. Your soulmate may be preparing to say, "I'm not asking you to wait." That sentence could hurt and comfort you at the same time. They want you. But they know they have no right to place your future on pause. Perhaps there are legal steps still unfolding. Maybe practical responsibilities mean the process is slow. Your soulmate may fear that by the time everything is resolved, you could be with someone else. This thought deeply affects them. They imagine another person meeting you without complications. Someone available. Someone who can call freely. Someone who can introduce you publicly. Someone who does not need months to disentangle a previous life. Your soulmate knows they could lose you to someone who simply arrives ready. That possibility creates jealousy. But also humility. Because they know you would not be doing anything wrong. You cannot be expected to wait for someone unavailable. If another person treats you well, your soulmate has no right to interrupt simply because they finally became ready. This is difficult for them. But if their love is maturing, they will respect your freedom. They may secretly hope that when they become truly available, you will still be open. Hope is allowed. Demand is not. Your soulmate is learning the difference. Perhaps they are also afraid to tell you because they believe you will see the entire relationship as a lie. Maybe some parts were hidden. But they want you to understand that their emotional connection to you was real. They did not invent the way they felt. They did not necessarily plan to deceive you for entertainment. They became trapped between desire, responsibility, fear, and avoidance. Again, this context does not remove your right to feel hurt. You may hear the story and say, "You still should have told me." That may be the most truthful response. Your soulmate needs to be able to hear it. They should not respond, "But look at what I was going through." They should say, yes. Because both truths can exist. Their situation was difficult. You deserved honesty. One does not cancel the other. Your soulmate may be preparing for this conversation now. They imagine your face when they say, "I was married." Maybe you already suspected. Maybe the words still shock you. They expect questions. How long? Did your spouse know about me? Were you separated? Why did you hide it? What exactly do you want from me now? Every question is fair. Your soulmate should answer directly. No vague language. No spiritual explanation designed to avoid facts. Facts matter here. If they say they are separated, what does separated mean? Living apart? A mutual decision? Legal steps? Or simply emotionally unhappy while continuing the marriage exactly as before? These distinctions matter. You deserve to know. Because someone saying, "My marriage is basically over," has sometimes been used to keep another person emotionally attached indefinitely. Do not accept a phrase where evidence is needed. Your soulmate, if sincere, should understand this. Perhaps they will say, "We are still legally married, but we have formally separated and live independently." That is clear. Or maybe, "We are still together, and I have not made a final decision." Also clear. If the second is true, then your boundary may need to be simple. Resolve your marriage before approaching me romantically. That is healthy. You do not need to become the person your soulmate uses to decide whether they should stay or leave. The marriage should be evaluated on its own reality. Imagine you disappeared tomorrow. Would your soulmate still believe the marriage needs to end? This question matters enormously. If the answer is yes, then the separation has its own foundation. If the answer is no, they may be using the intensity with you as an escape from ordinary marital dissatisfaction. Your soulmate needs to know which is true. You do too. Perhaps they have already asked themselves this. Maybe they spent months away from you precisely because they needed the answer. And after all that distance, they still knew, the marriage is over for reasons that exist independently of you. That may be the more to the story. But it does not automatically mean you should reunite tomorrow. Ending a marriage can create emotional chaos. Even when the decision is right, there is grief. Your soulmate may need time alone. They need to learn who they are outside the marriage. They need to process what went wrong. If they move directly into you without processing, they may bring the old relationship's wounds into the new one. Resentment, trust issues, conflict habits, fear. You deserve better than becoming the landing place for unresolved grief. Perhaps your soulmate knows this. Maybe this is why they have not rushed toward you even if separation has begun. They may be thinking, "I need to arrive cleanly. Not perfectly, but responsibly." They want you to know that if they choose you, it is because they consciously choose the relationship, not because they are desperately escaping another one. That is a healthier motivation. Perhaps they are in therapy. Maybe they are journaling, speaking honestly with someone they trust, trying to understand why the marriage deteriorated. They are asking themselves what they contributed. This is important. If your soulmate tells the entire story as, "My spouse was terrible, I did nothing wrong, then you saved me," be careful. Healthy self-reflection involves ownership. Maybe their spouse made serious mistakes. Your soulmate still needs to understand their own patterns. Did they stop communicating? Did they avoid conflict? Did they hide dissatisfaction until resentment became enormous? Did they become emotionally unavailable? Those same habits could follow them into a relationship with you. Divorce does not automatically remove them. Growth does. Your soulmate may finally understand that. And perhaps this is why the story is deeper than you know. The marriage has forced them to confront parts of themselves your connection also exposed. Their fear of confrontation. Their habit of hiding difficult emotions. Their need to keep everyone happy until nobody is truly happy. Maybe your soulmate remained married for years because they were terrified of disappointing people. Family. Children. Friends. Community. They thought leaving would make them selfish. So they stayed and quietly became more emotionally absent. Now they are learning that avoiding a difficult truth does not necessarily protect people. Sometimes it simply delays the pain while making everyone less authentic. Your soulmate may finally be choosing honesty. First with their spouse. Then perhaps with family. And eventually with you. This is not easy. Someone may blame them. Someone may blame you despite having no evidence you caused the breakup. Your soulmate is preparing for that. They do not want you dragged into accusations. They may choose to keep your identity private until the marriage is completely resolved. That can be responsible if it means protecting you from unnecessary involvement, but it should not become a permanent excuse to keep you secret once they are genuinely free. There is a difference between privacy during a divorce and secrecy inside an ongoing affair. Your soulmate needs to understand that. Perhaps they finally do. They may tell you, "I will not ask you to meet secretly. I will not ask you to lie. I will not ask you to wait." Those statements matter. If their love is real, it should protect your integrity. Not pressure you to compromise it. You can care deeply and still say, "Come back when your life is clear." Sometimes that is the most loving thing. Because otherwise, the connection could begin carrying resentment before it even becomes official. You may resent waiting. Your soulmate may feel guilty. The spouse may feel betrayed. Everyone lives in ambiguity. Clarity prevents this. Your soulmate may be afraid that clarity costs them you. But this is part of growing up emotionally. Doing the right thing cannot depend entirely on whether the outcome benefits them. If resolving their marriage is right, they need to do it even if you eventually choose someone else. If staying in the marriage is what they genuinely decide, then they need to release you romantically rather than keeping you as a hidden possibility. Either way, honesty. That is the standard. Beloved, Perhaps your soulmate has recently imagined the conversation where they finally tell you. They may have written the words mentally many times. I need to tell you something you deserve to know from the beginning. That opening already contains accountability. Then, I was married. Pause. I should have told you more clearly. Another pause. The marriage had been struggling long before we became close, but I was afraid that if I explained that, it would sound like an excuse. Perhaps you become angry. Your soulmate expects it. Maybe you say, it does sound like an excuse. They must not run. This is part of growth. Stay. Listen. They can reply, I understand why it sounds that way. I'm not asking you to excuse it. That would be meaningful. Then they tell the story. Not to manipulate you. To give context. Your soulmate may tell you that some nights they returned home after speaking with you and cried privately. You might ask why. Because meeting you forced them to acknowledge how lonely they had become. They felt guilty for enjoying emotional connection outside the marriage. They felt angry with themselves for not addressing the marriage sooner. They feared losing you. They feared destroying their family. They feared staying forever. Every direction seemed painful. So they did what frightened people often do. Nothing. And doing nothing created consequences. Your soulmate may confess that they hoped time would decide for them. Perhaps you would stop caring. Then they would not have to choose. Perhaps the marriage would magically improve. Then their feelings for you would fade. Maybe circumstances would change. But life refused to make the decision for them. The feelings remained. The marriage problems remained. And eventually you started leaving emotionally. That became the first clear consequence. Your soulmate realized that refusing to decide was still a decision. They were choosing to lose you slowly. That revelation devastated them. They may have wanted to reach out then. But what could they say? Please stay while I figure out my marriage? They knew that was unfair. So perhaps they remained silent. Again, you interpreted it as indifference. Your soulmate interpreted it as sacrifice. Both perspectives contained pain. But the lack of communication meant neither person understood the other. This is why any future between you cannot be built around assumptions. Your soulmate knows. They may tell you everything now because they want no hidden foundation. If the truth ends the possibility, at least the ending will be honest. If the truth allows a future, that future will begin with both people knowing what actually happened. This is healthier. But beloved, do not allow the emotional depth of their story to make you ignore one simple question: are they truly available now? Not emotionally, almost. Not soon. Now. If not, protect yourself. You do not need to punish your soulmate. You simply refuse to become part of an unresolved situation. They can handle their responsibilities. You can continue living. If someday circumstances are clear, perhaps you speak again. There is no need to freeze your life. Your soulmate may understand this more than you expect. They may even be the one who tells you, "Please don't wait for me." Those words could break their own heart. But perhaps they say them because they have finally learned that love cannot demand captivity. They want you happy. Of course, they hope that happiness eventually includes them. But if not, they must respect your life. That is what mature love begins to look like. Not, "You belong to me because we have a connection." But, "I care enough to let your choice be real." Your soulmate may need to prove this. If you say you are dating someone, how do they react? Jealousy is human. But do they become controlling? Do they attack the person? Or do they say, "I understand. I waited too long"? That response reveals character. Your soulmate knows they may have lost their place. This creates enormous regret. They imagine what would have happened if they had told you earlier. Perhaps you would have walked away immediately. That possibility hurts. But at least you would have known the truth. Perhaps you would have said, "Resolve your situation first." Then maybe both of you could have avoided months of confusion. Your soulmate sees this now. Sometimes truth appears risky because we focus only on what it may cost immediately. We ignore what secrecy may cost later. Your soulmate learned that lesson painfully. They may have preserved your presence temporarily by hiding the full story. But they damaged trust. Now rebuilding, if possible, will take longer than one honest confession. Your soulmate understands that too. They cannot say, "I finally told you everything, so now you should trust me." No. Truth is the beginning of repair.